The galaxy had long since forgotten Earth. Among the 1,000 brilliant civilizations that mapped the stars, humanity was little more than a footnote. The great empires dismissed them as a curious but fragile species, stubbornly tied to a single system and reliant on ships that would be considered antiques anywhere else. Alien scholars sometimes mentioned them in passing, inventive, unpredictable, but destined to remain small. And humanity played along with that story. For generations, leaders of Earth listened politely when galactic envoys offered advice, smiled when trade guilds mocked their crude technology, and endured the constant reminder that they were latecomers to the interstellar stage. Behind the mask of humility, though, humanity remembered its own history. No empire in the galaxy had survived the way Earth had survived, through famine, fire, war, and endless reinvention. The patience of humans was not weakness, it was strategy. Far beneath the red soil of Mars, buried under layers of rock and deception, lay a secret built on that very patience. A project so ambitious that even those who authorized it wondered if it was madness. Its name was Prometheus. Officially, the project did not exist. It was not listed in Earth's military records, nor whispered of in political circles. It was the kind of secret that lived only in shadows, handed down through a chain of guardians who hoped they would never be forced to use it. Decades earlier, when humanity first encountered hostile alien raiders on the edges of Sol, a decision had been made. If the galaxy ever turned against them, Earth would need more than fleets and diplomacy. It would need something so far beyond expectation that no enemy could prepare for it. The first stone was laid beneath Mars, then steel, then engines. The years passed and the project was hidden deeper, wrapped in silence, powered by minds sworn to secrecy. What grew there was not simply a warship, but the embodiment of every lesson humanity had ever learned. How to turn weakness into strength, how to fight when outnumbered, and how to make survival into an art. Now, as whispers of conflict stirred at the edges of human space, Prometheus stirred with it. On Earth, the people of the planet lived their lives as they always had. Families gathered in cities that glittered by the oceans, merchants traded in the orbital stations around Jupiter, and colonies stretched across moons and asteroids. But beyond the edges of Sol, the Dominion was moving. Reports came in from outlying colonies, of warships, strange signals intercepted by listening posts, sudden disappearances of freighters that had strayed too close to Dominion borders. In the council chambers of Earth, the mood was grim. They were not raiders, they were conquerors. Their empire stretched across 100 star systems, fueled by a doctrine of expansion that saw every new species as either a resource or an obstacle. And now, their attention had turned to humanity. Generals studied the maps of space and knew what the politicians did not dare to say aloud. If they attacked with the full weight of their fleets, humanity's conventional defenses would not hold. Humanity's navy was disciplined, its officers skilled, but compared to the armadas of the Dominion, it was a candle before a storm. That was why Prometheus had been built. In a chamber deep under the Martian crust, the guardians of the project stood before vast doors that had not been opened in decades. Beyond those doors lay a machine unlike any other, resting in silence, waiting for the call. The air smelled of old metal and cold dust. Lights flickered to life as dormant systems stirred, and the guardians exchanged glances heavy with the weight of history. One of them whispered, almost afraid of being heard, "Do you think the galaxy is ready for this?" Another answered quietly, eyes fixed on the sealed doors. "The question is whether the galaxy is ready. The question is whether we are." Above them, the red storms of Mars raged across the surface, hiding all evidence of what slept beneath. The world turned silently, its secrets untouched, as the void beyond grew ever more dangerous. Humanity's place in the galaxy was about to change, though few on Earth yet understood how deeply. The first shadows of invasion had begun to fall, and Prometheus would soon awaken. The first message from the Dominion was brief. A massive hologram shimmered into existence above Earth's council chamber, projected by the diplomatic relay stations orbiting high above the planet. The figure that appeared was tall, armored in gleaming silver plates, its voice cold and measured. "Humans of Sol, your expansion ends here. Submit to the Dominion and you will be spared. Resist and your worlds will be reduced to silence. The chamber fell into uneasy silence after the message ended. No one present doubted the seriousness of the threat. They had conquered dozens of civilizations before. They did not bluff, and they did not retreat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Chancellor leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly on the table. We all know what this means. They've chosen us as their next target. Words will not turn them aside. Around her, generals, scientists, and counselors exchanged troubled glances. Admiral Holt, commander of Earth's defense fleet, shook his head slowly. Our ships are well trained, but the numbers are not in our favor. If they send a fraction of their navy, Saul will be overwhelmed. We can fight, but we cannot win this war with conventional means. His words hung in the air like a shadow. No one argued. Everyone at the table knew the truth. For years, reports had trickled in from the frontier. Human freighters had been vanishing near territory. Listening posts on the edges of the belt had picked up faint signatures of unknown vessels. Some captains swore they had seen warships slipping in and out of dark space, silently charting human systems. The Dominion had been preparing, step by step, tightening its grip until the time was right to strike. Now that time had come. Counselor Elias Juno broke the silence. His voice was quiet but steady. There is one option left to us, one that was never meant to be used lightly. The others turned to him. They knew what he was suggesting, though none had dared to say it aloud until now. Admiral Holt's eyes narrowed. Prometheus. The room grew still. For decades, Prometheus had been spoken of only in coded messages and whispers. Even among the highest levels of command, few were trusted with its full truth. But here, under the shadow of the Dominion, there was no longer room for secrecy. Chancellor exhaled slowly. If we wake Prometheus, there will be no turning back. The galaxy will know what we've built. Every empire will see us differently. Some may fear us, others may despise us. But all will know we are not as weak as they think. And if we do, Counselor Juno asked, then humanity will not live long enough to worry about how the galaxy views us. A silence followed, heavy and final. No one spoke against it. That night on Mars, the sealed chambers beneath the surface rumbled to life. Massive doors that had not moved in decades began to shift, groaning under their own weight. Ancient lights flared, illuminating the colossal hangars where the project had slept. The S-Nemesis, hidden away since its completion, loomed in the darkness like a slumbering titan. Technicians and engineers moved quickly through the corridors, reactivating systems and running diagnostics. The hum of power returned to the vessel, spreading through conduits and reactors like blood through veins. One by one, dormant engines began to glow, and the Nemesis stirred as though it had been waiting for this very moment. Far above, in the black of space, scouts crept closer to the edge of the system. Their commanders studied the human fleets and reported their findings. To humanity's defenses looked fragile, laughably insufficient. The Dominion's High Council awaited the signal to begin their march of conquest. On Earth, few civilians understood the storm about to break. Life continued in the cities, in the colonies, in the stations, drifting silently between worlds. Children studied, workers built, traders sold their goods. Yet whispers spread through the networks, rumors of fleets massing at the borders, of new warships being prepared in secret. In orbit around Saturn, Admiral Holt stood at the command deck of the carrier Resolute, watching as patrol ships swept the system's edge. His officers kept their voices steady, but Holt could see the tension in their movements. Every scan, every blip on the sensors might be the first sign of the invasion. He remembered the words of the envoy, "Submit or be silenced." Humanity had never been a species to kneel. In the days ahead, the galaxy would learn that truth in ways it had never imagined. For now, the shadows lengthened. The Dominion advanced, and beneath the Martian crust, the ultimate star destroyer prepared to rise. The first vibrations were faint, a deep tremor that rolled through the Martian bedrock like the pulse of some buried beast. At first, only the engineers stationed in the lower levels felt it, a subtle shift underfoot, the whisper of dormant systems stirring after decades of silence. Then the tremor grew, resonating through the cavernous chambers carved beneath the surface, until the air itself seemed to thrum with awakening power. The doors to Hangar 1 slid open, revealing a chamber so vast that entire city blocks could have fit within it. And there, lying in the shadows, was the vessel that had cost a generation of secrecy and sacrifice to build. The Nemesis. It dwarfed every ship humanity had ever constructed, stretching for kilometers, a spear of metal and composite alloys wrapped in armor no weapon had yet tested. Entire sections of its hull gleamed with layered plating designed to absorb and redirect energy. Massive engines lined its rear, each one capable of bending space around itself. From bow to stern, it radiated silent menace. To the untrained eye, the Nemesis looked like a warship. To those who had helped design it, it was something far more. The culmination of every innovation humanity had kept hidden, every desperate idea dismissed as impossible by the galaxy's standards. Within its hull slept technologies no alien power believed could exist. Commander was the first officer to step onto its bridge after reactivation began. She paused at the threshold, staring across the wide command deck. Screens blinked awake, glowing softly as systems initialized. Consoles displayed streams of code, their long-slumbering algorithms checking themselves against modern protocols. For a moment, let herself breathe it in, the smell of recycled air, the faint hum of power lines coming alive. "This ship doesn't just move," she murmured. "It breathes." A voice echoed behind her, "And soon it will fight." Admiral Holt entered, his footsteps firm despite the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He had been among the few who knew of Prometheus in its entirety, and now he carried the burden of bringing it into the light. He looked across the bridge, his jaw tightening. "How long until she's fully operational?" he asked. A technician at the nearest station replied, his voice carrying equal parts excitement and nerves. "Reactor startup will complete within 6 hours, Admiral. Weapons will follow. We'll need another day for the jump drives to sync, but she'll be ready." Holt nodded slowly. "Good, the Dominion won't wait, neither will we." As the hours passed, the Nemesis came alive piece by piece. Engineers recalibrated its gravity lenses, massive structures that could twist space around enemy ships, dragging them off course or tearing them apart entirely. The ship's rail cannons, each the size of a city tower, powered up with quiet menace, their barrels capable of launching projectiles at fractions of light speed. Deep in its heart, stealth arrays activated, bending signals and masking the ship from detection in ways that would confound even the most advanced scanners. And then there was the ship's most closely guarded secret, the Veil Drive. A technology born of human stubbornness, dismissed as fantasy by galactic physicists, it allowed the Nemesis to not simply travel through space, but to fold it, tearing a path where none should exist. It was humanity's first true step into territory no empire had dared to tread. From orbit above Mars, civilian satellites recorded the faintest hints of power flickering across the surface, strange readings buried deep beneath the crust. Most dismissed them as anomalies. A few conspiracy networks whispered of hidden weapons, but no one truly grasped the scale of what was awakening below. On the frontier, scouts continued to chart Sol with predatory patience. They saw the standard human fleets, counted their ships, measured their strength. What they did not see was the Nemesis, still hidden, still preparing. As night fell over Mars, the ship's engines rumbled to life. The cavern vibrated as vast turbines roared, each pulse echoing like a heartbeat. Lights blazed along the hull, outlining its shape as dust fell in waves from the ceilings above. Slowly, almost ceremonially, the docking clamps released. The Nemesis rose. It lifted from its cradle with the grace of a leviathan breaking the surface of an ocean. Its shadow swept across the hangar floor, swallowing the smaller service craft around it. Technicians paused to watch, all reflected in their eyes as the ship that had lived only in secrecy now soared before them. On the bridge, Commander gripped the rail as the view before her shifted. For the first time, the Nemesis saw the Martian sky. The hangar doors above peeled open, revealing the crimson horizon. Beyond, stars glittered coldly, as if waiting to judge this new arrival. Admiral Holt gave a single nod. "Take her out." Engines flared, casting Mars in ghostly light as the Nemesis climbed higher, slipping free of its prison of stone. The surface trembled as the great vessel breached the sky, rising into orbit, its silhouette vast against the glow of the planet below. In the void, where no empire had yet seen it, humanity's ultimate star destroyer awakened. And far across the galaxy, the shadows of the Dominion crept closer, unaware that their prey had just revealed its teeth. The Dominion did not wait long. 3 weeks after their ultimatum, a spearhead fleet slipped into the Sol system. The scouts had reported human defenses as modest, outdated, hardly a match for. Confident of swift victory, the Dominion dispatched a battle group of 20 ships, more than enough in their view to overwhelm a young species and shatter its resistance before it began. The fleet appeared beyond Neptune, its vessels gliding into with cold precision. Dreadnoughts dwarfed most human ships, their hulls lined with weapons arrays, their armor forged from materials that had crushed countless civilizations before. To them, this was routine. Another system, another conquest. But this time, things would be different. Admiral Holt stood on the command deck of the S-Nemesis, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Red markers lit the edges of the system. Around him, officers moved quickly but calmly, each aware of the weight of the moment. "Dominion ships detected," Commander reported, her voice steady. "They've formed attack pattern Delta. Course is set for the inner system." Holt gave a quiet nod. "And they don't know we're here." The Nemesis drifted in the shadows of Saturn's rings, cloaked by its stealth arrays. To the region appeared empty. To the humans, it was the stage for their first strike. "Admiral," a lieutenant said, "Fleet Command is requesting our move." Holt studied the red markers a moment longer. 20 ships, enough to devastate Earth's defenses if they broke through. But today would mark the end of the galaxy's underestimation. "Signal command," Holt ordered. "The Nemesis will engage." A murmur rippled across the deck. This would be their first battle, their first test. No simulation could predict what would happen next. Engines rumbled as the Nemesis slid free of the rings, her vast silhouette emerging from the drifting ice. To sensors, the ship appeared suddenly, as if from nothing, a phantom larger than anything they had ever faced. For a heartbeat, confusion reigned among the invaders. Then orders barked across their comms, and the battle began. The Nemesis fired first. From its bow, a lance of compressed gravity tore across the void. It struck the lead dreadnought, bending metal and space alike. The enemy ship buckled, armor plates collapsing inward as if crushed by an unseen fist. In seconds, the mighty vessel folded in on itself, vanishing in a burst of fractured light. On the bridge, disbelief turned to shock. No weapon they knew behaved like this. No species was capable of such force. The Nemesis did not pause. Rail cannons roared, hurling slugs at near-light velocity. Shields flared, cracked, and shattered under the impacts. Stealth drones slipped free from the Nemesis's flanks, vanishing into the void before erupting within enemy formations, tearing through engines and weapons arrays with surgical precision. The fleet responded in kind. Energy beams lanced toward the Nemesis, washing across its armor. Explosions rippled along its hull as the giant ship absorbed the barrage, shields flickering but holding. The deck shook, but systems compensated, steadying the vessel like a giant bracing against the wind. Commander gripped her console. Shields at 80%, no structural breaches. Holt's eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. "Return fire, show them who we are." The Nemesis unleashed another volley, this time activating its Veil cannons. Space itself shivered as bursts of energy erupted around vessels, collapsing their trajectories mid-flight. 2 cruisers collided in chaos, tearing themselves apart before they could realign. Panic rippled through the enemy formation. This was no primitive defense fleet. This was something else, something beyond anything the Dominion had ever faced. On the bridge of the flagship, Commander snarled. His voice thundered across the comms. "Hold formation, they are only one ship, crush them." But it was not just one ship. The Nemesis was a force of nature. Minutes stretched into an hour. The battle raged from Neptune's orbit to the dark reaches of the belt. One by one, ships fell, torn apart by weapons they could not predict, struck down by tactics they did not understand. Human officers fought with grim determination, turning every strike into a lesson, every blow into proof that they belonged on the galactic stage. Finally, as the last surviving frigate limped into dark space, retreating with broken hull and shattered pride, silence fell across the system. On the Nemesis's bridge, the crew exhaled as one. Commander allowed herself a rare smile. "The first clash," she whispered. Admiral Holt stood tall, though his expression remained steady. "Send word to Earth Command. The Dominion came for conquest. They found resistance. And this," he gestured toward the stars still lit by the wreckage of enemy ships, "is only the beginning." Far away, across the Dominion's vast empire, reports would soon arrive. Whispers would spread through alien courts and councils. Humanity had unleashed its hidden power, and the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The battle at the edge of Sol did not remain a secret for long. Communication relays had recorded every moment, every desperate order, every flash of impossible weaponry. Though their commanders tried to control the flow of information, word leaked across trade routes and intelligence networks faster than light. Within weeks, stories of the human warship spread through markets, embassies, and council halls across the stars. At first, no one believed them. "Exaggerations," scoffed the merchants of the End Syndicate. "They'll lose a handful of ships, and suddenly the humans are gods of war. Ridiculous." In the amphitheaters of the council, scholars debated heatedly. "No single ship can wield such power. It must have been a trap or sabotage, perhaps the fought themselves." But recordings did not lie. Dozens of perspectives, scattered, chaotic, and raw, showed the same truth. A human vessel emerging from the shadows, striking with weapons that tore space apart, scattering a fleet that should have been unstoppable. For many, the footage was unsettling. The galaxy had long agreed on certain rules of war. Energy weapons, shields, jump drives, these were the limits of known science. Entire civilizations had risen and fallen within those boundaries. Humanity had ignored them. On the Dominion's High Council convened in rage. Commanders reported the loss of a full battle group. Some demanded immediate retaliation, calling for fleets to burn Sol to ash. Others, more cautious, warned of the unknown. "We do not understand this nemesis," one strategist admitted. "Until we do, more fleets may fall the same way." The council argued for days, their voices echoing through grand chambers of stone and fire. Pride clashed with fear until compromise emerged. The Dominion would not retreat, but neither would it rush blindly into another defeat. They would gather strength. They would learn, and then they would crush humanity with overwhelming force. Meanwhile, in quieter corners of the galaxy, other empires watched with wary interest. The Commonwealth, known for its scholars and diplomats, convened in secret. Ambassador of the outer colonies leaned over of Sol, tracing the reports of battle. "If the humans can truly manipulate gravity on this scale," he said softly, "then the balance of power has shifted. Even one ship may alter centuries of order." Across the stars, smaller species, those who had lived under the shadow of great empires, whispered their own hopes. If the humans could stand against perhaps there was a chance for others to break free as well. But not all whispers were kind. On the trade stations of the clans, smugglers exchanged rumors of human arrogance. "They'll draw fire from everyone now," one said, lowering his voice over a glass of spiced liquor. "The Dominion won't be the only power who sees them as a threat. No one likes an upstart species with impossible weapons." Back on Earth, the mood was mixed. News of the victory spread rapidly across the networks, celebrated with pride and relief. Cities lit their skylines with banners, colonies broadcast songs of triumph, and children reenacted the battle with toy ships in their hands. Humanity had faced the galaxy's predators, and won. Yet beneath the celebration, unease simmered. Reports warned that there were massing fleets. Analysts predicted that the first clash had been only a test, a probe to measure humanity's resolve. The real war was yet to come. In orbit around Earth, the Nemesis floated like a silent guardian, its hull gleaming in the light of the sun. To most civilians, it was a symbol of safety, proof that their species would not kneel. But to those who had walked its corridors, it was also a reminder of the burden they carried. On the bridge, Commander stood beside Admiral Holt, gazing out at the curve of the planet below. "They're all celebrating," she said quietly. "They think this ship makes us invincible." Holt's eyes stayed on the horizon. Victory is never that simple. One battle doesn't win a war. The Dominion won't stop. They'll come back with everything they have. Nodded slowly, "Then we'll be ready." The Admiral turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Readiness is not enough. We need to show them more than strength. We need to show them what it means to be human. They've seen our weapons. Now they must learn our will." Far beyond the solar system, fleets gathered in the dark, preparing for their return. Across the galaxy, empires adjusted their strategies, weighing whether to fear or to court this unpredictable new power. And in the shadows of Mars, the Nemesis waited, its engines quiet, its weapons charged, as humanity prepared for the storm that was coming. The galaxy was unsettled. The age of dismissal was over. The warning came first as a whisper and grew into a roar. Deep space sensors picked up formations moving faster than expected, dozens of massive vessels converging on the Sol system. Warships, far larger and more numerous than the fleet defeated at Neptune, stretched across the void like a shadow swallowing the stars. The Dominion had learned from its mistakes. It was no longer a small strike force testing humanity. It was a full-scale armada, bent on absolute destruction. Admiral Holt studied the display on the bridge of the S-Nemesis, his face set like carved stone. Thousands of enemy ships, each one a war machine capable of obliterating entire colonies. Earth's conventional fleets, though disciplined and loyal, would be hard-pressed to hold even one sector. "This is not a skirmish," he said quietly. "This is an invasion." Commander leaned over her console, tracing the paths of incoming vessels. "Their formation is tight," she observed. "They've learned from Neptune. They're protecting their capital ships with layers of frigates and destroyers." Holt nodded, "And we'll need to break through every layer." Earth had not been idle. Shipyards across Mars, the asteroid belt, and orbital stations had been working non-stop since the first clash. Human engineers and AI systems had adapted quickly, integrating new tactics and weapons gleaned from the Nemesis's performance. Small strike teams, using stealth drones and fast assault ships, were ready to harass and delay the advance. But the Nemesis would be at the center of the defense. In the command center on Earth, Chancellor watched live feeds from the fleet as the enormity of the approaching armada became clear. Her advisors whispered numbers, ship counts, weapon strengths, potential casualties, but she hardly heard them. She saw only the horizon, a dark line of destruction approaching. Humanity would survive only if it could face this storm with courage, cunning, and a willingness to fight beyond what any alien power expected. Holt activated the comms, sending instructions across the fleet. "All human vessels hold positions at the edge of the system. We will draw them in one sector at a time. Protect the colonies, protect Earth. The Nemesis leads. Follow her path and trust in what we've built." His hands moved across the bridge as calculations scrolled past, plotting courses that no alien strategist could anticipate. They would not merely react. They would force the into traps, exploit weaknesses in formation, and use every innovation humanity possessed. The Nemesis was not just a weapon. It was the spearhead of an entire species, ingenuity. In the void, the fleets moved with precision. Their dreadnoughts powered through asteroid fields. Their cruisers patrolled the flanks. Every vessel carried enough firepower to obliterate a human city, yet none anticipated the human mind behind the Nemesis. Every strategy the Dominion had relied upon would soon collide with unpredictability. On the Nemesis, engines hummed, shields shimmered, and weapon systems powered up in silent readiness. The crew moved with calm determination, each knowing the risks. For some, it was their first battle. For others, it was a test of all they had trained for. Yet every officer understood one simple truth. Humanity's survival depended on them performing flawlessly. Glanced at Holt. "They don't know what we can do yet," she said, a hint of resolve in her voice. "We have the advantage of surprise." Holt's gaze did not waver. Surprise alone won't win this war, but it will make them hesitate, and hesitation is something humans can exploit better than anyone else. Back on Earth, citizens sensed the tension even from orbit. Orbital satellites relayed images of the distant armada, a black stain moving across the void. Children stared at the sky, adults worked feverishly, and everyone waited for the inevitable. Fear existed, but it was tempered by pride. Humanity had survived worse than this before. Humanity had risen in the face of impossible odds. As the first waves of the fleet approached Jupiter, the Nemesis prepared its first strike. Missiles armed with gravity warheads, rail projectiles capable of punching through the largest armor, and drones that could evade any sensor were all ready. Yet Holt knew this battle would be more than a test of technology. It would be a test of human will, creativity, and courage against an enemy that believed itself unstoppable. "Prepare for engagement," Holt ordered. "The storm arrives and we do not run. Humanity stands, humanity fights, humanity prevails." The Nemesis shuddered as its engines roared to life, lifting the Star Destroyer from orbit into open space. It cut across the void like a silver blade, heading toward the heart of the approaching armada. The first clash of titanic fleets was near, and the galaxy watched silently, waiting to see if the species long dismissed as primitive would survive the coming storm. And for the first time in its history, humanity would show the galaxy the true measure of its resolve. The void ignited with motion. Thousands of warships stretched across the darkness, their hulls glinting in distant starlight, an endless tide of destruction moving toward the heart of the Sol system. Behind them, the human fleet formed a fragile shield, small, nimble, disciplined. But the S-Nemesis hovered at its center, an immovable spear poised to strike. Admiral Holt's voice echoed across the Nemesis's bridge, calm yet commanding. "Position steady. Focus fire. Remember what we've trained for. Remember why we fight." Commander's fingers danced across the controls, orchestrating the first maneuvers. Stealth drones detached from the Nemesis's hull, vanishing into the shadows only to erupt into coordinated strikes against the vanguard. Rail cannons flared, sending projectiles faster than thought, each one a calculated strike aimed at the weak points of enemy armor. The Dominion's response was immediate. Energy beams flared across the void, cutting through empty space and human shields alike. Explosions rippled along smaller vessels, twisting metal and fire in deadly patterns. Yet the Nemesis absorbed, deflected, and adapted. Every attack taught it, every strike fed the ship's defenses. "Shields holding at 95%, reported Lieutenant, scanning the damage logs. "No critical breaches." Allowed herself a small nod. "Good, keep pressure on their flanks, let them overextend." From the flagship, Commander roared orders. "Focus on the Nemesis, crush it first." But the Nemesis was never meant to be a single target. It was humanity's cunning made tangible. Gravity warheads twisted the trajectories of the largest dreadnoughts, causing them to collide in catastrophic bursts. Stealth drones infiltrated command arrays, leaving vessels adrift, blind, and confused. Entire sections of the fleet fractured, unable to anticipate the human strategies. The human fleet moved with precision, exploiting every opening. Smaller frigates darted between larger vessels, harassing shields and disabling weapon systems. Missile barrages synchronized with rail strikes created overlapping zones of destruction, each attack more devastating than the last. "Engage the Veil cannons," Holt ordered. The Nemesis's most secret weapon activated. Space itself seemed to ripple as the ship folded the void, launching bursts of energy that tore through enemy formations. Two cruisers were shredded almost instantly, their remains spinning silently into darkness. Panic rippled through the lines. Formations that had seemed flawless dissolved under the humans' relentless assault. From orbit around Jupiter, the human colonies watched and recorded the battle in awe. For the first time, many realized humanity was no longer a species to be or ignored. Humans had fought back, not with overwhelming numbers, but with ingenuity, adaptability, and courage, turning every disadvantage into advantage. Hours passed like minutes. The Nemesis led strike after strike, each one more precise, each one demonstrating the full scope of human strategy. Ships that survived the initial onslaught attempted retreat, only to find themselves trapped by hidden fleet formations and gravity distortions. Their pride turned to desperation, their confidence into terror. On the Nemesis's bridge glanced at Holt. They're faltering, their command structure is breaking. Holt's expression remained calm, though satisfaction flickered in his eyes. Not yet. There's still more work to do. Push them beyond the point of recovery. Show them what humanity is willing to do to survive. The Nemesis surged forward, its hull slicing through space like a silver blade. Gravity torpedoes, rail projectiles, and coordinated drone strikes transformed the battlefield into a storm of controlled chaos. Dreadnoughts fell in succession, each destruction a testament to human adaptability and determination. Even the Dominion's most experienced admirals were forced to concede ground, unable to match the human speed, creativity, and relentless will. As the battle reached its climax, the flagship attempted a retreat, dragging a handful of surviving vessels toward open space. The Nemesis pursued, unfurling its full arsenal in a final, decisive strike. Energy cascades tore through the enemy fleet, obliterating every ship within range. By the time the void quieted, only scattered debris remained where the armada had once surged. Silence fell over the battlefield. The Nemesis floated amid the remnants of enemy technology, unscathed and radiant. Human officers allowed themselves brief smiles, but no one celebrated too long. They had won the day, but the war was far from over. Admiral Holt addressed the crew, his voice steady, carrying across the bridge. The Dominion came for conquest. They found resistance, and more than that, they found a species unwilling to be dominated. Humanity has shown the galaxy what we can do, but our fight is only beginning. Remember this victory and remember why we fight. Looked out through the viewport at the shattered fleet, the debris glinting against distant stars. We've proven something today, she whispered, not just to them but to the galaxy. The Nemesis stood at the center of the void, its engines humming with quiet authority. Humanity had fired across the stars, and the message was clear. They would never be underestimated again. Silence followed the storm. The void was empty now, save for drifting debris and the faint glimmer of distant stars. The Armada, once a formidable tide of conquest, had been shattered, its survivors scattered to the far reaches of the galaxy. Humanity's fleets floated among the wreckage, steady, disciplined, and unbroken. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Admiral Holt stood in quiet reflection, his gaze fixed on the remnants of enemy vessels. The hum of the ship's engines filled the space, steady and reassuring. Around him, officers moved calmly, recalibrating systems, monitoring fleet status, and preparing for whatever might come next. Every sensor confirmed the same truth. Humanity had survived the impossible. Commander approached the Admiral. Her expression was resolute, but a hint of awe lingered in her eyes. "They won't try this again," she said. "Not for a long time." Holt shook his head slowly. "They may return. Other powers may see opportunity in their absence, but what we've done, what humanity has shown, will echo across the galaxy." Beyond Sol, the galaxy began to change. News of the Nemesis's victory spread faster than any fleet could travel. Signals carried eyewitness reports, intercepted communications, and data recordings to every empire, council, and independent world. Speculation became certainty. The humans were no longer a species to be underestimated. In distant halls of power, alien diplomats debated how to respond. Some advocated caution, suggesting alliances or truces. Others urged preparation, unwilling to trust a species that had just destroyed a fleet thought invincible. Across the stars, whispers spread. Humans possessed cunning, determination, and weapons that expectation. A species once dismissed as primitive had claimed its place among the great powers of the galaxy. Back on Earth, celebrations were restrained but heartfelt. Citizens lit the skies with banners and projections, honoring the fleets that had defended them and the ship that had carried humanity through fire. In the colonies, children reenacted the battles, dreaming of space, technology, and courage. Humanity had survived not because of numbers alone, but because of ingenuity, courage, and the refusal to yield. Yet amid the celebrations, there was a quiet understanding among those who had served on the Nemesis. Victory had come at a price. Fleet officers and crews bore the weight of responsibility, knowing that every decision could have meant catastrophe. Holt moved across the bridge, observing his officers at work, each one disciplined, alert, and ready for the next challenge. "Humanity has more to show," he said softly, almost to himself. "We've proven strength, but now we must prove wisdom." Commander stepped beside him, her gaze fixed on the stars. "The galaxy saw our weapons. Soon it will see our resolve." For the first time since leaving Mars, the Nemesis fully emerged into open space, free from the shadows that had concealed it for so long. Its vast engines glowed faintly, and its hull reflected the distant sunlight. In the blackness of the void, the ship was a statement. Humanity was here, prepared to defend itself and capable of shaping the course of history. Reports came from across Sol. Colonies had survived the invasion attempts, fleets had reorganized, and communication networks had held despite the chaos. Earth's leaders, scientists, and strategists began to discuss the future not as a species under threat, but as one ready to claim its place in the stars. The Nemesis became more than a ship. It became a symbol, a beacon of human ingenuity, courage, and unity. Across the galaxy, young species looked at the humans with a mixture of fear and admiration. Every empire reconsidered its assumptions. Every diplomat revised treaties and policies. Humanity's rise had begun, and the impact would be felt for generations. In the quiet moments that followed, Holt and stood together on the bridge, watching the galaxy stretch before them. The void was calm, but it was a calm that carried promise. Humanity had unleashed its hidden power, and now it had a choice: to retreat into safety or to shape the universe with its courage, intelligence, and unyielding will. Holt's voice was steady, resolute. "The age of dismissal is over. The galaxy will remember this day. Humanity stands not just as survivors, but as equals among the stars. The Nemesis has risen, and with it we rise." Knotted eyes fixed on the distant lights of Sol. "A new dawn," she said softly, "for humanity and for the galaxy itself." Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, full of challenges, opportunities, and unknowns. The Nemesis glided through the void, engines glowing like the first rays of sunlight. Humanity had proven itself, not through luck, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, courage, and an unshakable will. And in that vast expanse of space, a new chapter for the species began. The galaxy would never forget the rise of the ultimate star destroyer.